Hello, everybody. So, I made a community post the other day on my YouTube, and it was just like I was going through my photos, and I found a picture of when I was in Mount Shasta and met the kind of famous Peter Mount Shasta, and I posted the photo of that on my YouTube, just as like a throwback, reminiscing, and a couple people commented saying they wanted to hear the story of me meeting Peter Mount Shasta. So I figured, with two people asking me to share that story, I was like, okay, so this is something that wants to be known about. So I thought it would be fun to take some time today reminiscing on that and sharing with you guys my experience of meeting Peter Mount Shasta. So, first of all, going to Mount Shasta, the first time I ever even heard of Mount Shasta, which is a mountain and volcano. It's also a town, but the mountain is the thing of that area, you know what I mean? It's a place in California, Northern California. My first time ever even hearing about Mount Shasta was in a video of Peter Mount Shasta. It was an interview of him talking, he was like sitting in the snow on Mount Shasta. And, he's this friggin' old guy, I highly recommend looking into him. I'll talk more about him as I carry on with the video, but look into him, research him, listen to his interviews, listen to his life story. He has tons of books. He's an author. Very, very interesting and far out guy. So the first ever time I heard of Mount Shasta was in a video of Peter Mount Shasta, as he calls himself. And he was talking about the mountain and the magic of the mountain and the mystery of the mountain and the spiritual significance of the mountain and how there's secret beings that live on the mountain, and his experiences with, being a hippie from the 60s and going to India and meeting Neem Karoli Baba and Anandamai Ma and all these Hindu saints of that time. It was when, for me, I guess you could call me some sort of a devotee of, Hindu spirituality, Ram Dass, Neem Karoli Baba, Anandamai Ma, Ramana Maharshi, these kinds of beings. So it was when I heard Mount Shasta and Neem Karoli Baba together that there started to stew within me a fascination with Mount Shasta. So that was, I'd say, probably 2, maybe 3 years ago that I learned about Mount Shasta. But then I went to Mount Shasta in August of last year. And I also went alone. This was not only my first time in California ever, but it was my farthest journey from home. And I was also completely alone. And I deliberately wanted to go alone. I wanted to be on my own for this experience. I could talk about it romantically, trying to find myself and deepen my spiritual practice. But more so, I wanted to learn how to enjoy being with myself more. And there's no better way to do that than to get yourself in a completely foreign environment, all on your own, where everyone around you don't know. You know what I'm saying? And a different time zone. I mean, it's only marginally different. California's 3-hour difference from where I'm at right now. But still, being alone in a completely new environment makes for if you haven't traveled a lot, which I haven't, it makes for a very vulnerable and raw experience, which will tie into the meeting of Peter Mount Shasta in a bit. But yeah, I wanted to share with you that I would say a solid 50% of why I went to Mount Shasta is because of Peter, because of this video of Peter and him describing the spiritual significance of this mountain. I didn't go to Mount Shasta to meet Peter. I kind of went to Mount Shasta because of what Peter talked about. So not only did I watch this video with Peter Mount Shasta talking about the spiritual significance of Mount Shasta, but I started watching all sorts of videos on Mount Shasta, and you look it up, man. It's a very spiritually rich place. There's certain tribes of people that believe that it's literally the center of the universe, and there's people that believe that it's a portal, and, you know, there's fucking UFOs up above it, and there's Lemurians that live down in the bottom, and people have gone missing, and there's tons of reports of these insane paranormal, extraterrestrial, spiritual, crazy shit. What normal folk would call crazy, impossible, woo-woo stuff. There are myriad reports of this kind of stuff going on at Mount Shasta. So in hearing all that and in learning all that, I was like, I'm going to go here at some point. And I remember adding it in my notes as a potential place to travel to, you know. And Mount Shasta, another thing, it's also considered to be the root chakra of the earth. It's the base, the point, you know, the bottom, the first chakra. Very interesting, and kind of cool to have been the first place that I traveled to on my own. The first chakra, you know, very cool. But I put it in my notes. I was like, okay, I might go there at some point. I don't plan to, but I might go there. And Peter was a big part of that. So, you know, kind of long story short, keeping it all compiled, I'd say around July of 2021, I was like, I want to travel, man. I want to do something. And I kind of want to go alone. I want to get out into the world and experience things on my own and just have a good time and see what it's like. I chose to go to Mount Shasta because around that time last year, around that time last year, there were tons of synchronistic things happening, pointing me in the direction of Mount Shasta. You know, my coworkers where I used to work last year or whatever, they moved to Washington. On their way to Washington, and I had talked about my interest in going to Mount Shasta. On their way to Washington, they sent me a video of a fucking mountain way off in the distance as they're making their way to Washington. And out of curiosity, I was like, what mountain is that? And they said Mount Shasta. And, you know, just seeing pictures of it on Instagram and stuff. Mount Shasta, huge-ass, beautiful fucking white-capped mountain. Seeing pictures of it on my Instagram. And the real icing on the cake, really, was I was driving on the highway, and a truck passed me, and it had a camper attached to it. And written on the side of the camper in big letters is Mount Shasta. I was like, all right, man. Something is asking me to go to Mount Shasta, so I will fulfill this seeming spiritual request that I can just tell is coming through. So I choose to go to Mount Shasta. I plan it like a month in advance. I went in like August 21st or something like that of last year, and I plan to go alone, all by myself. I'm hyped. Day comes of going to Mount Shasta. I pack my stuff up. You know, I wake up early in the morning, get on the plane, go to, take the plane over to California. I landed in Redding, California, had someone pick me up to the car. I was fortunate enough to be so close to Mount Shasta. You know, Redding is only like an hour or so away from Mount Shasta. I get the car that I rented. I'm driving to Mount Shasta, bro, and I'm in the beautiful friggin', you know, I live in Maine, and the way I described Northern California was like, it was like Maine on crack, bro. It was like the trees and the conifers, the pines and the cedars and all that stuff, but like way more. And there were like fucking just cliffs and like winding around, you know, like the movie scenes of people winding around the sides of mountains and stuff. That's what Cali looks like, bro. And it's very cool, very, very, very beautiful, hot, intense, you know. And as I'm driving to Mount Shasta, I'm friggin' singing holy songs, Shri Ram, Jai Ram, you know what I'm saying? Just having a wonderful time. And I see Mount Shasta way off in the distance. I'm like, I'm coming for you, bro. And it was an hour away, but I could see that bitch. And that was the crazy part. Because I live in Maine. We don't have mountains like that. We have, as my coworker called them, glorified hills. They're just these kind of nice little cliffy looking things. But yeah, seeing Mount Shasta in the distance was crazy. I get to Mount Shasta. I get to my hotel. It was this little motel room. It was called, if you want to look it up, it was called like the Monte Bianco inn or something like that, right centered in the town of Mount Shasta. And the town of Mount Shasta is like this old school cowboy kind of vibe, dude. And I saw hippies, bro. It's crazy. I'm gonna try to stay focused on meeting Peter, though. So I get to Mount Shasta. This was the first. What I'm about to tell you was the first cue that I had that there was something weird. There was a sort of weird energy that was setting in. So I walk in. I'm so excited. I was singing holy songs the whole way to Mount Shasta. I get to my hotel. I open the door. I walk in. I shut the door. I set my bags down. And it's dead quiet. It's this tiny little fucking room the size of like the room I'm in right now, with a bed and a fridge and a coffee maker and a bathroom and a shower, and it's dead quiet. And I'm like, and I look out my window and I see people walking down the side of Mount Shasta Road, and it suddenly dawns on me, what the fuck am I doing out here? I'm in California. I'm on the other side of the country from where I live. And I'm alone. And I don't know why I'm out here. And it hit me all at once. I was like, why? What am I doing out here? It was a panic started to kind of mount. I wouldn't call it anxiety, but I would call it, it was more intense than that. It was more shocking than that. It was like, what the fuck? Why am I out here, bro? Who do I call? What am I gonna do? Drive to the airport and say, please take me home? You know what I'm saying? I'm on the other side of the fucking country. I left everything I knew and went all the way to California. And yes, I understand it's the same country and stuff, but still, far out. Literally, it was far away. I was far away. I was all alone. I didn't know anybody around me. And I just felt this very strange, panicky feeling. And it wasn't just normal like worry and concern and like, oh my god, I'm having a panic attack. It was a weird kind of panic. It was like dare I say, divine panic. And the reason I say that is because what I felt was similar to the panic and fear that I've felt while on psychedelics, like LSD. It was like the fear that I felt like I was on acid. I wasn't hallucinating and I didn't, feel weird, but I felt fucking like I was tripping, man. Like I was like, what the hell am I doing out here? I'm all alone in this little room. And I called my brother and he said, dude, you're all good. You're just on the other side of the country, man. You're like, we're right here, bro. Like, you're chilling. And he settled me down a little bit, and I called my mom, and she's like, I'm here, and she's like, have you got groceries yet? I was like, no. She's like, well, I think you should maybe go get some groceries, keeping me grounded, because I was starting to float off into, you know what I'm saying? Like, I was just starting to drift off into like, wow, why the fuck am I out here? And, they brought me down. Go get some groceries. So I walked out and I talked to people and I familiarized myself, and I was like really tense and nervous, dude. Like it was weird. It was a very almost primal reaction to being so far from home and all on my own. And I think also, which is important to note here, is the weirdness of that location and the mountain. Mount Shasta is described as like a spiritual energy vortex. That's what my coworker said. I was like, he had been to Mount Shasta, and he's like, yeah, man, it's like a energy vortex, and he's like, and that's the only way I can describe it. So I knew something weird was going to take place in going to Mount Shasta, and that was the first thing that happened that made me realize, okay, this is a weird fucking place. And I come out of my little motel and I look up behind the motel and I see the mountain towering off in the distance, and I'm like, what the fuck? And it's just snowy at the top. It's fucking August, peak of summer, but it's snowy at the top, and I'm like, this is far out, man. Like I want to get up there, but I need to like settle down into my environment a little bit, sort of integrate what's going on around me before I just dissolve and surrender into the energy of the mountain, But I felt this very weird energy. That's what I wanted to point out there. I met Peter the next day. I got there, I think it was Wednesday. I met Peter on Thursday, the first full day. The first time I woke up at that hotel, that was the day that I was going to meet Peter. So I had emailed him later on in the evening of when I first arrived. I emailed him telling I'd arrived, and he sent me his address, and he asked about time, and we both agreed that tomorrow would be a good day. The next day would be a better time for us to meet, and we picked like afternoon time, like 11:30 or something like that. So I woke up, I drank some shitty coffee that had the creamer was like separated from the coffee, so it was just black coffee with like creamer curds in it, because there was just like an organic grocery store there, because it's like all hippies, and I didn't know what the hell I was buying, so I bought like a fucking bag of raw sugar and had to grind my own coffee beans, and I was so out of my element, man. It was wild. But I drink my separated coffee, and I drive to Peter's house, bro. And I'd settled down a little bit in the time of over the night, over the evening, and then waking up in my first morning there. I'd settled down a little bit. And I had planned, I'm going to go meet Peter, and then I'm going to go up on the mountain, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that, and stuff. My itinerary started to sort of lay itself out naturally. But I drive to Peter's house. He lives in Weed, California, which is a town over from Mount Shasta. Probably like a 20-30 minute drive or so. I drive to his house, and I was like, my mom was making jokes about this old man that's gonna steal me and shit. Because he's old. He's like probably like late 70s or something like that. He's an old man. So I was a little weirded out. Like, I was like, once again, what am I doing? Like, I'm going to meet this guy because he's spiritual. Like, what's happening here? So I'm driving there. I get to his house. He comes out. And I'm like, oh my God, look at that. That's him. There he is. Peter Mount Shasta. It was kind of like a fanboy moment. Like, wow, look at that. There he is. And he invites me in. He says, come on in. I shake his hand or something. He gives me a nice, soft, hippie handshake. And I come in. And the first thing this guy says to me, I'm wearing a hat. You can actually see in my community post, maybe I'll post a little picture of it. I'm wearing my hat. The first thing he says to me, bro, is, if you'd like, you can take your hat off, because I feel like it blocks the God consciousness from entering into the top of the crown chakra. You're in for a crazy experience and conversation when someone prefaces the conversation with a statement like that. So I was like, I got you, bro, and I take it off. Like, I'm down with letting the God consciousness come into my crown chakra. I feel you, bro. I take it off. This guy's house, bro. First of all, dead silent. Second of all, it's all white. There's the only pictures on the wall are pictures of saints and holy beings. It's just white and sunlight and plants and holy beings and saints all over the walls. And he has like rainbow paintings representing the 7 chakras along the spine. And on his table, his like what I would assume is a kitchen table, but it's more like a ritual table. It was like he was doing a ritual of some sort. There were fucking crystals all over the place. There's a deck of tarot cards laid out, and there were like these paintings of like holy beings, Saint Germain being the most popular and prominent one that Peter Mount Shasta, that's like his guy. Saint Germain is Peter's like whatever, you know what I'm saying? So it was very, very powerful energy being in the presence of Peter. It was, as far as I know, being in the presence of Peter was the first time I'd ever been in the presence of someone who had been at the feet of Maharaji, Neem Karoli Baba, which is just an absolutely far-out Indian guru, Ram Dass's guru, that I love so deeply. And Peter was like the first guy that I knowingly met that had been with him and had darshan of Neem Karoli Baba. Not only Anandamayi Ma, And see, that's the crazy part, is he was sharing all this. He told me about some crazy shit, bro. Like, just to share one as it's popping up, I mentioned Anandamayi Ma. He told me about meeting Anandamayi Ma, where Peter was in India back in like the 70s or something, or even 60s maybe, And he went into this grocery store, and there was this lovely lady that was buying food, one like in the line ahead of him. Beautiful, long black hair. She's buying groceries, and she turns around, and Peter sees that it's no other than Anandamayi Ma herself. And Peter was like, because that's a fucking guru, bro, you know? And he's like, oh my God, that's Anandamayi Ma. Why is she alone? Why is she buying groceries? Anandamayi Ma didn't speak English. Peter didn't speak Hindi. But he told me that Anandamayi Ma was speaking Hindi and Peter was speaking English, and they were walking along the road together. And they were understanding each other. They completely knew what the other one was saying. You know what I'm saying? Like, they understood each other somehow, some miraculous way. And he also had another encounter with Anandamayi Ma where Peter was riding in a rickshaw down the road, and once again, he sees Anandamayi Ma on the side of the road. And Anandamayi Ma bowed at him. This is a fucking saint bowing at Peter, bro. And Peter said, the way he described it was that that was the first time he had genuinely been bowed at. And he saw that what she was bowing at was not Peter, but she saw God within him. And he said he felt this exploding, blossoming ocean of love and bliss and ecstasy within him in response to Anandamayi Ma bowing at him. So that's one of the stories he told me, you know. He told me another story of meeting Neem Karoli Baba, and he's sitting in the back. Everyone else is talking to him and touching his feet and having a wonderful time, and Peter's just sitting in the back like, man, what's the whole point of this, you know? And something happened where a banana landed in his lap, and Peter's like, what the fuck? And he looks up. There's not a banana tree. He looks up at Maharaji and everyone, no fruits, no nothing, just a banana manifested out of nowhere or something. And I think Peter had said something in his mind like, yo, if you're legit, Maharaji, if you're actually a saint, you know, do something, or something to that effect. And a banana manifested, boom, fell in his lap out of nowhere. That's what I'm saying. In my community post, I said that Peter has experienced things that many people, a lot of people, would describe as impossible. And he just told me these stories one after the next, after the next, after the next. It was like mind-blowing hearing his stories. You know what I mean? And he had an insane experience where I'm going to butcher his story trying to tell it, but and I suggest looking into it yourself, but he had an insane experience where he went to India and then he came back. He was living on this farm, and he had this vision of this being, maybe it was even Saint Germain, that told him, sell your farm and go to like California or something like that, you know? So he's like, I don't know about that. I just had a vision of a God that's telling me to sell everything I've invested my life into. I don't know if I should take that advice. Peter felt like he didn't have anywhere else to go in his life, though, and nothing else planned, so he figured, why not? So he listened to his vision. He sold the farm, and he went to, it was a forest in California. I can't remember the name of the forest. It was like Muir Woods or something like that, maybe. I'm not sure. Can't remember off the top of my head. But he was in this forest, and he pulled up to this forest, bro, and it was first thing in the morning, and it was pouring rain. No one was there. He walked into the forest on the trails, and see, here's the thing. Peter figured, okay, so there's all these beings, these high beings, that can just ascend into samadhi and leave their bodies and not be manifest on this plane anymore. Peter was like, all right, man, this plane seems like a realm of suffering. I'm not really digging being here. I'm just going to go into samadhi and leave my body and then just call it good. Like, I'm going to dip out. Thank you for everything, Earth. I'm going to head out. So Peter said, okay, I'm going to go out into the forest of California and leave my body. So he went to this forest, went into the woods. He walked off the trail, and, you know, if you've been to Cali, there's these huge redwoods the size of this fucking room. And there was one that had been hollowed out because it had been burned on the inside. So he walked into that, and he sat down and he was meditating. doing Vipassana meditation, as he described to me. And, you know, to try to stay concise here, he heard the crunkling of the leaves walking up to him. He was meditating, and he heard the crinkling of leaves walking up to him. And, you know, someone's disturbing his meditation. He opens one eye, and he sees it's this guy wearing jeans with no shoes, and as he looks up, it's the being he saw in his vision. It's Saint Germain. Fucking looking like a mix between hippie and God. Standing over him. Saint Germain says, you know, Peter's like, whoa, what the fuck? And another thing he said is, he was completely dry. The rain wasn't affecting him. He wasn't wet at all. He was just standing there. Saint Germain says to Peter something to the effect of, I want to show you something. And Saint Germain reaches out his hand and touches Peter on the third eye. And Peter suddenly is outside of his body and sees himself sitting in meditation. Peter says, wow, that's pretty far out. You know, who are you? You know what I mean? Or something like that. And Saint Germain's like, I'll tell you later, or something like that. And Saint Germain says, I want to show you something else. And he puts his arm around Peter, and they fucking like ascend out of Earth onto this other plane. And Peter described to me that they were in this realm where every being was made of rainbow light energy. And that's what the paintings in his house were portraying, was this vision he had where all beings, all consciousness was rainbow energy, and you communicated psychically and immediately through energy and thought and shit. And Peter said he was just absorbed in the bliss of this space and was, yes, this is it. This is what it's about right here. This is what I was looking for. Thank you so much for bringing me up into this heavenly, ecstatic realm. But Peter starts to increasingly get distracted by this murmuring sound below him. It sounds like this murmuring sound below him. Peter starts to get distracted. He's like, what the hell is that? Like, what's this sound below me? And Peter asks Saint Germain, the being that's there with him, he says, what is this sound I'm hearing below me? Like, it's distracting me from the bliss of this space. Saint Germain says, that's the sound of the suffering of humanity that you're hearing. That is their crying that you're hearing. And the saints hear this sound all the time. That sound that Peter was hearing down below him was the suffering of humanity, the crying and screaming and agony of humanity. And Saint Germain told him that that's what the saints hear all the time. So Peter was like, nope, I'm all set. And like fucking collapsed back down into his body. And I don't know if Saint Germain was gone or if Saint Germain, before he left, told Peter, drive to Mount Shasta, California. It's like a 6-hour drive from where he was. The first person you talk to will give you your next teaching. So Peter comes out of this fucking God vision, like high as hell on some far out energy, and has the message given to him to drive to Mount Shasta. And, you know, to cap off this crazy-ass story that he's told many times and tells with much greater detail and flair and emphasis than I am now, he got from where he was, I think it was like Muir Woods or something. He got from those woods to Mount Shasta, which is like a 6-hour drive, in what felt like an hour. He just got in his car and started driving, and suddenly he just like morphed into Mount Shasta and was there. You know what I'm saying? So, far out guy. Peter, very, very, very far out guy. Now I want to talk a bit about, like I could go on and on about the crazy ass stories he told me and the shit that he experienced and just his life story, but he has books written on that stuff and he has numerous videos talking about this. So if you're listening right now and you're interested in hearing about this guy, go and research him because he's a far out guy. Now I want to talk about what it was actually like being with him, because we had a far out moment together. You know, I was there for like 2 hours, and yeah. So he had these two chairs pulled up, facing each other, and we sat down. He's looking at me, and he's telling me and sharing these stories, asking me how I got involved with spirituality, and I was talking about psychedelics and Ram Dass and psychology and philosophy and Hinduism and all these things, and he's telling me, he's like, I like your beads, you know what I mean? And just, he's seeing God within me. He's seeing the divine within me. I could see it. I could see that he was seeing past my ego, Devin, and was seeing the divine. It was very, very far. I've never had someone, to my knowledge, acknowledge me in that kind of way. And I could see, I knew he was doing that. And I'm down with fucking seeing the divine in beings, let alone reciprocally, if that's a word, where we're both seeing each other. We're seeing God in each other, and that God is who we are and is the one that we're seeing, and it's a reflection of that one. Okay, so it was really far out to be in the presence of this guy. Not only his stories, but the energy that was emanating off of this fucking guy. And remember the weird energy that I talked about feeling when I got to the hotel? I started to feel another rising wave of this panic, you know? And I'm like, Peter and I had started this meditation together where we were talking and we were just looking at each other, and he would be talking to me and then he would just start staring at me, and he was just looking into my eyes, and we both would just dissolve and stop talking and just sit there. And there was a period of time where we sat there for probably 10 minutes or so, just dead quiet, looking into each other's eyes. God knows what he was seeing, but from what I experienced, guys, it was pretty far out. I'm looking into this guy's eyes, and I'm feeling this rising wave of divine panic. You know what I'm saying? It was the same energy I felt when I got to the hotel in Mount Shasta. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what the fuck? I'm like, what am I going to do? Run out of this guy's house because it's too spiritual? Like, what am I going to do here? What is this? I need to face this energy and be with this energy and rest with this moment. But that moment was intense as hell, bro. High vibration, high energy, crazy shit. The experience I had of looking into this guy's eyes, you can look into yourself in the mirror, or you can sit and meditate with somebody and look in their eyes. When you do that, crazy shit happens. They morph into fucking DMT beings and shit. I was seeing Peter sitting in front of me, probably 2 or 3 feet away from me. He was morphing, bro. He was fucking like full-on psychedelic morphing visuals. As I looked into his eyes, he's turning into different people, man. He was aging. He was going young, and he looked like he's wearing different clothes, and then he's getting older, and then he looks like Peter, and then he's morphing into all these different beings. And another thing, I couldn't determine if this was just from the reflectiveness of the white house he lived in or what, but everything around him and in my what you'd call peripheral vision just started more like dissolving into this brilliant angelic white light. Everything just was white. All I saw was this guy fucking morphing into different beings, and this white angelic light consuming the rest of my vision. He kept saying to me at random intervals, who knows who he was speaking to or where he was speaking from, but he kept saying to me, I am the light of the Son of God. He just kept saying that. I am the light of the Son of God. I am the light of the Son of God. S-U-N, not S-O-N, S-U-N. I am the light of the Son of God. He told me to say it. He said, you say it. Just say it. You tune into that place in you. You say, I am the light of the Son of God. He was coaching me in this weird, in a way I've never been guided before. I told Peter, I said, bro, why do I feel this fear? I felt like he was like within me and he knew just what I was experiencing and we were right there as one. I felt completely connected with him and I said, why am I experiencing this fear? He told me, you're a very high being and this fear that you're feeling is the ego trying to veil you from the knowledge of who you really are. And that just made my fear worse, bro. That was so cool to hear, and I fucking resonated with it and was like, let's go, bro. I'm a high being, dude, and this fear I'm feeling is the fucking veil of my ego ripping apart. But that made the fear worse, because I was like, if you've ever been high out of your mind on psychedelics and it feels like you've tuned into God and you're touched into God consciousness and normal reality is gone and you are like one with the divine and the eternity and the infinity of God consciousness and all that crazy shit, and you've touched the reality of that, that's what I was feeling in Peter's house in Weed, California. Mount Shasta in the background. I was tuned into the infinity. It felt like there was nothing outside. It felt like it was just him and I in that moment. And that's where I got the fucking like the inclination to run away. But that's when I worded to myself like, what am I gonna do? Like sprint out of this guy's house and speed down the road because it's too spiritual? Like, what does that mean? So I had to let go and surrender into the energy of that moment. And it was wild, man. It was weird. It was weird. I kept telling him, like, why do I feel the inclination to fill the silence with words? And he just didn't respond to me. He just keeps looking at me. He had shared his stories for a while with me, and then it just dissolved into this meditation. And he was telling me that up on Mount Shasta, up above the highest point that you can drive to, a little ways up there on this little plateau on the side of the mountain, there is a temple, an astral temple with hooded beings that worship and live at this temple, and he's seen them. He's sat up there on the mountain and he sees this temple off in the distance. He says, what the fuck is that? And he approaches it and there's these hooded beings that take him in and show him stuff. And, impossible shit. Fuck you mean astral temple? This guy, Peter, is either insane and has been for 50 years, or he's experienced things that go against the grain of what mainstream culture believes to be possible. Those are the two options. I'm more inclined to believe that he's experienced things that mainstream culture doesn't really believe in. I'm not going to point a finger and say, nope, he's insane, that's too scary, get me out of here. Because I'm experiencing within me the same wonder and the same infinity and God consciousness that he's talking about. I know what he's talking about. I know how far out reality is. I know how impossible shit can happen. I've experienced crazy ass shit too. Not really to the extent that he has, but to such an extent that I can feel the legitimacy in what he's talking about. He's not lying. He's not lying. He's not mentally ill. It's crazy to even think that. I mean, not according to mainstream culture, but you get the point. I believe what this guy's talking about. So being like a fascinated spiritual seeker, I'm sitting up on Mount Shasta, bro, up on this little plateau, and I'm like looking out of the corner of my eyes for like a fucking temple to appear, or like for a hooded being to start approaching me, or for like this fucking portal to open to call me in or something. Like, I'm waiting for that crazy shit to happen. Nothing happened. Probably had to do with the fact that I was looking for it, but yeah, like, it was far out hanging out with Peter. You can get his books. You can watch his videos. He has a YouTube channel. Just look up Peter Mount Shasta. Really cool guy. Really cool guy. Really far out guy. He's lived and led a spiritual lifestyle for decades. I even had the thought at one point that he was the source of the strange, primal energy that I was feeling in arriving at Mount Shasta. People are talking about how, oh, Mount Shasta is so weird. It's like, no, bro, Peter's fucking weird, and he lives at Mount Shasta, so that's why. That's probably not the case, but it was a thought that ran through my mind because I felt that same far out dissociative energy sitting in his house that I did when I arrived at the hotel. So yeah, I don't know. It was a interesting time hanging out with Peter. I'm very grateful that he let me hang out. We haven't talked since. I said thank you, and he said you're welcome. Simple. Got a picture with him. But yeah, I'm just trying to think real quick if there's anything else. I think that's really it, guys. You get the point of it now, man. The subtle little details that I'm forgetting in this moment are okay. You get the point of how far out this was. So, to the two individuals that reached out and said that you wanted to hear the story of me meeting Peter Mount Shasta, I hope you see this video, I hope you watch it, and I hope you feel fulfilled in hearing that far out experience I had in meeting him. And thank you so much for reaching out. People don't often do that on my YouTube channel, where they reach out to let me know what they would like to hear for a video. So thank you guys so much for doing that. I was just realizing there's probably a delay in my audio at this point because of this microphone. But it's whatever. You can hear it. Thank you guys so much for reaching out and telling me you would like to hear this story. I hope you enjoy this video. And to all of you who watched, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. It was really fun reminiscing on that experience, meeting Peter. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much, and namaste.